Quite the elegant virtual background.
Thank you. I like to be somewhat different.
I thought about hanging the green screen behind me to use some of the backgrounds, but I don't have one. And
But that's not actually a green screen. That's actually in the Zoom program. There's a capability of adjusting your backgrounds, and all I've done is a digital background and added it in my Zoom program.
there's something in Zoom, maybe it's because of the operating system I have or something like that, that for some reason I think I need a green screen with it.
Really?
Yeah, let me go open my Zoom real quick, see if I can see in my account settings. Ooh, that was some good lightning. I don't even see it in there at the moment. Background and filters, there you go. Yeah, I have a checkbox on mine. I have a green screen. And if I check that checkbox, I can use the filters. Oh, there's another file, video filters. Yeah, it won't let me look at those. And the virtual filters, it won't let me do without a green screen.
Yeah, remove the I have a green screen and just try hitting one of the pictures that's in there. You can add pictures.
Well, like I say, I have a green screen unchecked.
Oh, unchecked.
Yeah, and it won't allow me to access them. So to
Huh.
access them, I have to check, I have a green screen. And like I said, I think it's probably my operating system or something, but I can't be certain yet. I want to say in an earlier iteration, maybe before an upgrade of some sort, I tried it and I think it like locked something up on me. And then they upgraded, to make me do a checkbox, something like that. But I'm gonna risk it and check it since it's only you and I in the meeting here at the moment. Okay, if I click, I have a green screen, it lets me look at and click those images. But then what I do, it doesn't work right.
Oh.
Oh, that's pretty spooky.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. Cancel that. Turn that off. All right. That was fun. Yeah. Like that little gnats flying around the house. Can't figure out if it's from the onions I harvested and if there's a couple in the onion bucket or if it's my compost bucket and they're coming out. Every now and again, I get a gnat trying to fly up my nose. Okay, let me go ahead and close this background folder. What time are we at? Oh, we still have a few minutes yet. Oh, I wanted to talk to you real quick too, because I sent out last week, I think it was the links to a couple of different, to the vendors to pay the vendor fee and asking for your logo and the link and stuff like that. Did you get that email?
I think so. Yeah, because wasn't it the tables? What was the price on the vendor tables?
Yeah, $100 for the vendor table.
And then it was lower for the nonprofits, right?
No, it's actually the same for all.
Okay.
But the other thing is you had purchased 2 tickets previously for entrance, and you get 2 tickets with your vendor fee.
Right.
You don't need, do you need those other 2? That's what I wanted to ask you about. Because if you don't, I'll refund that to you.
No, just leave them in there. I gotta still check to make sure that their American Nurse Association is going to be able to afford $1,000 table, which they should. But
I was
worst
gonna
case
say,
scenario,
if it's a problem, let me know and we can work with you for sure. I was hoping initially to try and give a couple of the nonprofits the some sort of discount, but unfortunately that didn't quite pan out for us.
okay.
I got a
I'm
couple,
not worried about the tickets I purchased. Were like $10 a piece or something.
$10 a piece. Yeah,
Just leave it there so that you have it for help supporting the event. Okay.
excellent. I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Let me go over to my other window here quick and start getting ready.
Mhm.
With me all. Oh, hang on 1 second. There he is. Okay. Ooh, look at that, 7:03 already. Mike's getting a little sidetracked there. All right, I just want to kind of scroll through here. And let's get rolling. First, I want to start by welcoming you all to the South Carolina Cannabis Conversation. All of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. All righty, let me close that disclaimer up. And again, we'll start by saying welcome to the South Carolina National Organization, or South Carolina chapters. Let me see if I can spit it out right. The South Carolina chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, Cannabis Conversation. So let's make it easy. South Carolina Normal Cannabis Conversation. Welcome to everybody that's joining in on the call this evening. Welcome to anybody that might be watching this live on our YouTube live stream. And also welcome to anybody viewing later as a recording on YouTube. When I mention YouTube, I also like to mention that we are not monitoring the comment section on YouTube while we're doing the live broadcast. So if you do make a comment down below, any questions, comments, or concerns, we will revisit YouTube's comment section when YouTube's done rendering. That's usually about 24 or so hours. And at that point, try and address your questions, comments, and or concerns. Tonight, we are going to talk a little bit about, and I want to almost finish scrolling here real quick. Okay. We've been talking off and on over the past couple of months about the CAO Act, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. I think for a long time, I was just calling it the Schumer Wyden Booker bill. But now it finally has a name. And They announced, I want to say back in July, the draft of this bill and an introductory draft, basically. And I did try and emphasize that with you all, that it was just a draft. It was not active legislation at that point. And then they opened up for a comment period, which ended September 1st. So about a week ago. One of our participants said, hey, why don't you talk about, a particular article came out about how the senators were flooded with input. So we did share that link in the original announcement for tonight's gathering. And I'm going to go ahead and share that link in the comment section now. And let's go ahead and I guess just dive right into it. I'll turn on the share screen. All right, I don't think I need YouTube. Oh, I don't need that open necessarily, but I'll leave it back there. All right, this was an article that came out in Marijuana Moment, and it came out 1 week ago, September 1st. So this came out just as the deadline hit, and talks about what, well, here it is, an overview of the public comments that senators have received on their marijuana legislation bill. So the top section of the story basically starts out telling you about the draft bill to federalize legalized marijuana, and that, you know, the deadline was coming. And feedback is flooded from an array of advocates and industry stakeholders. We'll kind of skip through real quick. As I mentioned, it's the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. There's suggestions in here for improvements, principally for its concerns, issues of social equity, licensing, tax policy, and interstate commerce. As I mentioned, this is a Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer bill with Senate Finance Committee Ron Wyden and Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey that are lead sponsors on this legislation. After releasing the draft version of the measure in July, they opened this public comment session. Pro-reform organizations like NORML, Marijuana Policy Project, National Cannabis Industry Association, and Hemp Roundtable made their voices heard. Now, I must say, it goes through, and quite a few of them applaud the senators for their work on ending federal cannabis prohibition. You know, but they had some recommendations for revisions. There's also some prohibitionist groups that weighed in. So we'll talk about them. They are listed down below as well, on what their thoughts are on changing, to be changed for better reflect the concerns of the overall policy of legalizations. So I actually never had heard of the Marijuana Justice Coalition before, and didn't realize that a couple of these big heavy hitters are a part of it. The ACLU, Center for American Progress, the Drug Policy Alliance, Human Rights Watch, Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, Move On, Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and Federal Food and Commercial Workers International Union said a joint letter on the legalization proposal. I will try and do my best not to read you this entire Marijuana Moment article and try and brief through this a little bit. Basically, what we have here is the recommendation from the coalition, saying that as we move forward, it's necessary that the Senate work alongside the House, as well as the Marijuana Justice Coalition and other key stakeholders to ensure that we build a bill that is greater than the sum of our parts. We encourage the Senate to hold a hearing on the issue of federal cannabis reform this year in order to inform our work on this bill moving forward. And I think more importantly, this section up here, they believe an approach to reform that doesn't include reparative justice, health equity, and community reinvestment is subject to larger policy reform, but rather an approach where its components are the primary goal. So, Justin Streckel, our director out at National Normal, I know he drafted a response. I don't know how much of this is part of his response in here. Our group, and I do want to highlight this, we are a consumer-focused group. So we're looking out for consumer rights. Normal looks out for consumer rights more so than we don't really place a lot of opinion on how to set up the businesses and regulating it, as long as except for how it benefits the consumer, or how it may be of detriment, and then we want to oppose it type thing. So we sent out a survey, and it mentions that our organization surveyed advocates throughout the nation, and includes their findings in a letter. But here's a real quick example. 73% of the respondents said including provisions to expunge past records is either very or somewhat important to them. And also another point here is 68% said that legislation should end drug testing for cannabis. That again is one of my passions. Is why I ended up becoming self-employed many years ago, because I wasn't going to pee in a cup for somebody. And I can't believe that it's still going on this many years later. I see somebody chatted and said hello. Oh, there we go. So that was a couple of quick examples. But the quote from Normal, for too long, the criminalization of cannabis has been a tool used to disrupt communities, foster distrust in law enforcement. And it's our sincere hope that your team will be successful in collaborating with your colleagues and other good faith stakeholders to ensure that the impending shift in federal policy takes great strides toward rectifying this situation by advancing comprehensive reform that is centered in science, evidence, and rational thought. I think Justin also kind of wraps up with the CAOA draft represents a thoughtful path forward toward ending marijuana criminalization. I know that's only a little portion of what he had sent in. Anyway, let's go ahead a little bit more on a couple of these others. Marijuana Policy Project. Again, we're enthusiastic about the goals. Actually, I talked to Karen just a couple weeks ago, but we believe regulatory aspects need significant clarification or revision to avoid unintended consequences. Our two major areas of concern are the possible upending of state licensing and regulatory systems, driving sales underground, don't want to upend existing systems, and the impact on medical cannabis access, including for those under the age of 21. Again, MMP is calling for robust provisions to provide relief for those impacted by marijuana criminalization and dedicated more tax revenue to communities hardest hit by prohibition. And MPP additionally proposed policies aimed at protecting medical cannabis patients and dispensaries, including by eliminating any federal tax on medical marijuana. I don't think most prescription drugs are taxed, and I agree. Federal, medical marijuana should, if it's medical purposes, should follow the same rules. Excuse me, I'm a little parching tonight. Now, here's something I did sort of see a couple of times through this. It starts with a framework of deference to states and includes a slow transition, avoids burdens that will drive the market for cannabis products back underground and stop destroying lives disproportionately, those of Black and Brown Americans. But a number of them talk about a slow transition back in, especially to allow states that have not legalized yet a chance to catch up. so that, the regulations don't prevent them from actually growing in their particular state. National Cannabis Industry Association. It discussed testing standards for cannabis products. Again, talks about restorative justice. But they're talking about now growing the industry and creating well-paying jobs. Let me kind of scroll through here a little bit more. U.S. Cannabis Council, now what they're talking about a little bit is like other organizations. They told the senators that they feel the Treasury Department, ATI, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Tax and Trade Bureau, the TTB, should be the primary regulators of the cannabis industry. So, I mean, where today we've got the DEA in control, and I think they've been talking about having the FDA, but really the TTB is probably the more appropriate regulatory body. It's noted that the complexity of diverse marijuana production in the states requires a new model for taxation at rates that do not fuel the illicit market. That's one of the complaints about tax rates that are too high, is people say, hey, hold it. You're charging me, an exorbitant amount on the tax rate. I'm just going to go to my guy down the street. He doesn't charge me tax. I can get the same thing for a better price. So they want to definitely set up a tax structure that does not fuel the illicit market. Excuse me. I do see some benefits to a regulated market, especially making sure that the product that we're getting is not tainted in any way. Law enforcement likes to put the scare in that there's going to be fentanyl tainted stuff. Don't want that happening, but also don't want chemical pesticides. Don't necessarily want any kind of mold and mildews on the plant material, and that's some of the things that the plant regulatory system can help with. Let me just kind of scroll here real quick. Again, they talk about social equity goals. At the end of the day, the detailed policy conversations taking place around the COA Act should not distract from its historic nature. We support the leadership. Students for Sensible Drug Policy. Boy, that kind of reminded me. I haven't been in touch with them here in Charleston lately. They again talk about, while fueling the public health crisis of mass incarceration, marijuana prohibition targeted the foundation of marginalized communities, leaving countless youth without guidance, an incalculable amount of economic loss, and the millions of families suffering for the loss of loved ones. As SSDP said in its comment, the time is long since passed to put this nightmare to an end. So again, I think that's more of just a pat on the back, but they did have some other information down below. Actually, no, I'm sorry about that. I'll bring that up in a second. Americans for Safe Access. Again, their organization made recommendations for the legalization to address the denial of federally assisted housing to people who use cannabis and compliance with state laws. And that's a real issue. People being declined social services, public housing, just because of marijuana arrests. And to encourage the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, I like this, to develop a cannabis physician education curriculum for the VA and civilian physicians. But they're more of a patient-focused organization than we are, so they are definitely looking and focusing on patient access to cannabis. And they don't really talk about the social equity aspect of it as much. The American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. This is an organization I had never heard of before. Here's another one that's talking about that concerns about giving the regulatory authority to the FDA and advises senators to consider the possible role of the Tax and Trade Bureau. Is that what it was? Tax and Trade Bureau within that market. And again, going into thanking them a little bit. Coalition for Cannabis Policy, Education, and Regulation. I must say, after our meeting, I'm going to have to go back and look into a couple of these groups because I don't know who they are necessarily. Their group submitted comments that included recommendations for developing regulations that curb the illicit market, respect state cannabis markets, and provide meaningful economic opportunities for small and minority-owned businesses. Governor Jared Polis chimes in, and basically his comments are talking about the banking reform. One of the first steps, and we know one of the first steps, but it mentions in here, first step is to support the state legal markets and to protect businesses by allowing them banking access. Colorado's Attorney General, Phil Weiser. I do like this a lot. He talks about protecting small businesses, making sure they're being protected and from being taken over by big tobacco and other major industries. That's definitely a concern of normal. Excuse me. There's a little gnats in the house. And apparently they must have just hatched or something. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's another one we really like to see if and when, I hate to say if, when South Carolina finally starts coming around. We don't want to see big corporations from out of the state come rushing on in and take over the market. We really think it should be more of a cottage industry. We want to see it grown within our local communities with our local community members. I mean, I got to admit, I'm one of those that I sort of roll my eyes every time I see some kind of commercial on TV about farms and stuff like that, because most of what they represent on TV about a farm is not how farms really are. They're massive industrial operations, most of them. And they're not the mom and pop and family operations that they like to represent. I support those ones. I support the small mom and pop farms and not these giant processing corporations. Anyway, mini rant done. So that's what the Attorney General of Colorado talks about. Could you imagine the South Carolina Attorney General ever saying anything like that? But he wrote that his state is disheartened to see the efforts in Capitol Hill. Yeah, some more back padding. But that to me is very important. Now, why they threw in this thing, they threw sensible Students for Sensible Drug Policy. Again, I think somebody accidentally threw a headline. Comes down to Hemp Roundtable. Hemp Roundtable was kind of interesting. I had never heard of that advocacy group as well. They made 5 different recommendations. And again, they're hemp and CBD centric, it looks like. Open additional pathway to sale for the sale of hemp extracts like CBD as food and beverage additives. 2, expand protections from the CBD, from just CBD to all non-intoxicating hemp derivatives and cannabinoids. Let me read that one again. Number 2, their recommendation to expand protections from just CBD to all non-intoxicating hemp-derived derivatives and cannabinoids. Number 3, allow all forms of safety evaluations permitted by law to be used, not just limit manufacturers to new dietary ingredients notifications, ENINs. Number 4, provide more comprehensive process for determining potential daily serving limits. Number 5, ensure separate regulatory pathways for non-intoxicating hemp and intoxicating cannabis products. They're looking for separate regulatory pathways for hemp-derived non-intoxicating and yeah, okay, I'm gonna mumble and grumble here a little bit. Hemp-derived, cannabis-derived, hemp is cannabis, if you ask me. I'm not a farmer and grower. I'm not a scientist. Maybe somebody will argue with me on it. So that to me is a little bit like calling it hemp-derived versus marijuana-derived. I'm going to scroll down to the next one though and let that kind of be. That was the hemp roundtable. And I actually went and looked at their website a little bit. The Parabola Center, newly formed group that's working to inform legalization legislation federally and at the state level with the intent of promoting social justice centered reforms. And it previously recommended changes to the House legalization bill that cleared the chamber last session. So that was last December, and has been reintroduced last year, again this year, the House Bill, the MORE Act, the House version. In its letter to the senators, it emphasized the importance of creating a legal cannabis sector that lifts us out of the long history of systematic racial and economic oppression stemming from prohibition and into a fair, open, and competitive market that is part of a new framework focused on justice and restorative practices. So that's the Parabola Group, Parabola Center. There's a bit more about them here. And again, their next paragraph talks again about the concerns over the rapid consolidation of state legalized marijuana industries. And it's said to have observed large current operators jockeying to dominate the market in various states and regions. Correct, Shane, in the chat. I agree. Hemp is cannabis. Marijuana is just a demonized name. But anyway, that is the Parabola Center. And so again, they're a little bit more focused on social equity, social justice, civil rights, civil liberties is how I look at much of that. Some principal recommendations from them. Take more concrete steps to incentivize states to maintain equitable markets by, for example, tying federal funding to define justice benchmarks. 2, to outline a more gradual path for interstate commerce. And 3, prohibit vertical integration and ensure that anti-competition provisions are included in the legislation. 4, prevent large tobacco companies from participating in the marijuana industry. So those are all the ones that are pretty much weighing in as opponents. There's some, as they put it here, marijuana prohibitionists that have also weighed in on the legalization prohibition. We've got SAM, the Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Not. And basically their position was exploring ways to mitigate the harms that have been perpetuated on vulnerable communities. Full commercial legalization of today's highly potent marijuana will only deepen these harms. That is Kevin Sabat, president of Smart Approaches to marijuana. Decriminalization of minor marijuana possession and expungement of previous records was a key part of President Joe Biden's platform and should be the path forward. But we cannot let the interests of the for-profit marijuana industry and its investors cloud the discussion. Now, I didn't hear any for-profit marijuana organizations up above. Those are all nonprofits. He said, much of what we've done with COVID, we must heed the science and be cautious with normalizing and promoting marijuana use. So apparently he's never taken a minute to look at, oh, I'm not on screen necessarily, I'm screen sharing. Look at the emerging clinical applications of cannabis and cannabinoids. There is much more, there's a lot of research out there. But anyway, that was basically smart approaches to marijuana's position in their communication to the senators. Oh, and also said that it would prefer not to federally legalize cannabis. Its scientific advisory boards has several recommendations if comprehensive reform is to be enacted. It wants a 5 to 10% cap on THC concentrations in marijuana products, a ban on significant restrictions in advertising, and prohibition on flavored or children-friendly products. There's some common ground on one proposal. Both Sam and several advocacy organizations feel that big tobacco and big alcohol should be prevented from monopolizing the market. So, you know, sometimes you've even got some something in common with folks you don't necessarily have a lot in common with. Community Aided Anti-Drug Coalition of America, CADCA. In a call to action campaign, CADCA encouraged members to submit pre-written letter to the senators that express concern about the commercialization of cannabis. So they pre-wrote a letter, quite often like we do with our Action Network type things. And their letter says that the CAOA purports to be about decriminalizing marijuana, but it would totally legalize the cultivation, production, distribution, and sale of marijuana, thus totally commercializing a new addictive and harmful substance. So that's CADCA. All right. And then, damn, folks, I sat here and kind of read this whole thing. I do apologize. In the next step sections, and actually that's the one part I did not previously read here. It's unclear on how long the comment period, after the comment period ends, that the bill will be finalized, formally filed, and referred to committee. But Schumer said on multiple occasions that he intends to bring the proposal to the floor soon. That's something I will definitely keep an eye on. Basically, our conversations with Justin Streckel on our national calls. Justin also does a pretty regular, but not always regular, federal political policy conversation every Monday night on, like I say, not every Monday night, but on Monday evenings. I'm going to say around 4 p.m. Eastern time. And again, he's not as consistent as we are here with our cannabis conversation. Sometimes I think they're at 4, sometimes they're closer to 5. If you miss him, you can at least, catch the recording. But he usually gives a pretty good update. He's on Capitol Hill quite regularly when they're in session. He usually keeps us pretty well informed and has some good clues and tips on what's kind of coming down the pike and when. So, Schumer does say they want to do it soon. I have already heard, calls to get this on the floor, as we've seen in our conversation, and be debated this year, before the end of session this year, where it breaks. As introduced, the legislation would federally deschedule cannabis, expunge prior convictions, allow people to petition for resentencing, maintain the authority of states to set their own marijuana policies, and remove collateral consequences like immigration-related penalties for people who have been criminalized over the plan. The bill would also impose a federal tax on marijuana products and put some of that revenue toward grant programs meant to support people from communities most impacted by prohibition who want to participate in the industry. That's another thing that is in this bill is the tax structure. It's sort of a 2-tier structure. The structure, I believe, starts at 10%, 15, 20, 25. But that's only on like the 20 million and $1 and above. I think pre 20 million, it's like half that amount. So your top tax rate, even if you're a small producer, would be like 12.5%. And so that's one point I do like to point out about that. It's a little bit confusing in the bill when people go at 25% tax rate. But that's again on the 20 million and first dollar and up. So it's it's half that amount. Again, it is to help to encourage, smaller operations. Let me kind of finish up here with this. There have been some various questions about whether the 3 senators will be able to muster the 60 votes needed to pass the legislation in their chamber, even with a slim Democratic majority in the Senate. There are some members on Schumer's own party who have expressed concern about the comprehensive reform. Do a quick check on. Oh, we got some comments going on here in the chat. Let me real quick check. Welcome, Kyle. All right. Where were we here? Now, yeah, this is another kind of important thing. President Joe Biden's position on cannabis presents another complication. Minutes after the senators unveiled the bill, White House Press Secretary Psakis was asked about a briefing about the administration's position on the legalization and said nothing has changed with respect to Biden's opposition to adult use legalization. I believe Biden's position was descheduled or rescheduled to like Schedule 3, which is absolutely not acceptable. He needs to do better. But then again, I've been watching some stuff about Biden and the and his comments on the crime bill. Somebody said, "Oh, hey, Google Biden crime bill gaffes," and there's some pretty like good face palms. So in the following days of the introduction of the COA, Booker repeatedly stressed that he wants to see the legalization pass before allowing incrementation. I just saw something flash up there. Okay. Allowing incremental reform to advance, such as bipartisan bill to protect banks. We talked about the safe banking. Service state legal marijuana businesses being penalized by federal regulators. The senator recently vowed to lay myself down to block any other senators who seek to pass marijuana banking legislation before the body approves comprehensive cannabis reform, igniting the controversy. Now, he's taken some criticism from shareholders on that position, though he later clarified that he simply feels that holding off on voting on the banking reform as a sweetener could encourage his colleagues to support more comprehensive legislation. All right, I'm going to real quick check here again on comments. Nothing real new in there. Let me turn off share. I'm back. Don't know where my other window got to. There it is. All right, so it seemed to pretty well address, I think, a lot of the concerns that, or comments that people had made when we first announced the introduction of this draft. Now it's a matter of, like I say, a waiting game to see how the senators take the comments and how they implement or don't implement them into their legislation. It's still a matter of pushing senators, as they mentioned, although we have a slim, or not we, but the Democratic Party that's pushing this bill has a slim majority in the Senate. There are some Democratic senators that are not necessarily on board with this bill. And we've seen a lot that, it tends to be right along party lines that things are voted on. I'd be really surprised if this was any different. Anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments about the bill at this point, or the recommendations that have been made?
I think we all have recommendations, but it is South Carolina, so
Yes.
there's not one state out there that has the perfect medical cannabis bill.
Oh, no, absolutely not. But I do believe, well, I'm not sure if or when this would get through the Senate and then get over to the House and pass. I'd really have anything besides press wood around here, knocking on wood here. I've really got my hopes up, for even our, Tom Davis's bill in spring. I'd hate to see it have to wait another round. Although it is still the, how does he put it, most restrictive medical marijuana bill in the nation. And he wants to draw a bright line between, medical and recreational use. I'd like to see it move forward, because I guess mostly because I don't want to see South Carolina be the last state. Get it passed, and then we can address its inadequacies, further down the road. I mean, even the senator knows that the efficacy of smoking is much better for some patients. A lot of PTSD, folks say that, they don't want to eat it, they don't want to vape it, they want to smoke whole flower. It gives them better relief. But and the senator admits it, he put the no flower, no smoking in there to appease SLED. A group of people that have absolutely, they're not scientists, they're not doctors, they're enforcement agencies, and they're enforcing propaganda. And they've been enforcing this propaganda, for a long time. And we believe there's, this legislation had ulterior motives. It wasn't about health and safety like they tried to claim. But that's a conversation that we've had before, and we'll have some other time. But that's kind of, I think, where we are with it. And I want to thank folks for recommending, for Joey for recommending that we talk about this tonight. It kind of pushed me to read it, to be quite honest with you. I do tend to skim a lot of stuff, and think I know it all, and I don't. Boy, Josh commented asking a question about Charleston. Oh, that's not what I wanted to put in there. Collective dispensary. Oh, see if I can do it right this time. I've heard of Charleston Hemp Collective. They're down on King Street in Charleston. So I'm wondering if this is maybe part of the same organization that you're asking about in Columbia, downtown Columbia. Um,
I think it is the Hemp Collective.
okay, yeah, they're not mentioning on their website a second location that I'm seeing. Find us, maybe that'll help me. Oh, there we go. Yep, Charleston, Columbia, Savannah, Georgia, Boone, North Carolina. So they are, that's just the name of their company, basically. I don't know. I'm assuming they work with several farmers. Just by scanning their page. I'll drop their about us here into the chat. Cool name, sounds impressive.
They just
I-
have some major real estate 2 blocks from the State House. Just look like their people are starting to gear up for something to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got mixed feelings. I mean, we don't. I've found some, I guess, apprehension from even a lot of the hemp retailers, some of the hemp organizations I'm working with. Normal, because again, we talk about cannabis, we talk about adult use of marijuana. And I think it's still that, out of the closet kind of thing where, oh yeah, we do hemp, but that's the legal stuff. We don't talk about the other. I don't know that about any particular company, that this company or anything, but I've gotten that kind of vibe from some of the groups. I would have expected to see kind of, at some point through the state, maybe more participation in some way or another with normal from some of the retailers, some of the people that are profiting off of cannabis in the state. But again, I think they're of the same situation where the legislators keep saying, oh, if we do this, it's just another stepping stone to get you to legal marijuana. And, we see it with the medical organizations, advocates. They don't want to be associated because normal has this stigma. We are the stigma cut folks of being the ones that want adult use marijuana without being locked up in jail, without being made to kneel on the curb or sit on the curb or kneel on the ground or hands behind your back, and not having to have some sort of life-threatening illness, which is pretty much what well, I don't want to say quite end of life hospice on Tom Davis's bill, but probably bordering on it. Anyway, sorry about that rant there, just to answer your question about that organization, that company. Yeah. Check it out. They source most of it there. Yeah, they source most of their stuff out of state. Woohoo. That doesn't impress me then at all. Come on, grow in your home state. Although I source from out of state. Come on, I'm talking
There
about-
might be a development. I know we're talking about how the hemp stuff, we're going for recreational cannabis, but a possible step in the right direction right now where my lawyer and I are talking with, Charlotte CBD, they have a big location in 5 Points in Columbia. And essentially I have some of my legal hemp plants in their building in like the windows to educational purposes. And apparently, let's just say someone on the sled side was trying to get to the store by getting to my lawyer and I about having the plants there, saying that the plants, you can't have them in retail locations, which was nothing in the bill about that period, because they were trying to shut him down through us. So we actually kind of have a chatting window with, I can't remember the name of the position, but it's like the Department of Agriculture's lawyer, and that's who directly communicates to the Attorney General about some of the BS arbitrary laws that go on, at least with the hemp space. So like, smokable flower is quote unquote illegal. Guess what? There's nothing that says that. We're held to a 0.3 total THC level. Well, how come in the state plan it says 0.3 delta 9? So I know it's everything, in my opinion, is a step in the right direction for legalization. So hopefully next year, at least in the hemp space, that can get a little better. And then also for the political race, even McMaster is, quote unquote, considering it. And I got Joe Cunningham's coming with me to MJ VizCon because he wants to get knowledge up and everything. So that would be good if he wins too.
There was a place down on King Street not a few years back that had some plants growing in their window, and I forget what happened about that.
It was Charleston Hemp Collective. So they.
It was Charleston Hemp Collective.
Yeah, okay. Matt Skinner is the guy that runs it. Cool guy. Wants legal in the state. So essentially, the same problem we're having in the hemp space, where the Attorney General, SLED and his goonies went and raided Charleston Hemp Collective without warrants, without probable cause, and just seized product saying it's illegal. And they were trying to pinch felonies on them. And essentially they fought back and they said there's nothing illegal we're doing. So that's another fight that's going back. So essentially what we're trying to do in the hemp space right now is make any CBD quote unquote dispensary have to get a permit to sell, because right now any hemp processor or farmer in the state technically can't sell to anyone that doesn't have a permit. So how do we sell in our own state? And we're trying to not like yell at the Attorney General, but like do it in a way of education, like legalization's right down the road. You might as well get your practice in right now about getting this all done the correct way.
You're talking about flower, correct?
For flower. Well, yeah,
right.
just like hemp products in general. If they had at least they had to sit through an orientation in a class, get a little sales permit to sell it. At least, that gives more confidence in the end consumer, which they'll go, okay, this isn't that bad. So cannabis can't be that bad. So it's just something where I get slowly trying to whittle away at the police, essentially, of, it's not that bad. Please stop harassing us.
Well, it's going to take, a lot, probably more than one lawsuit, like you said. It's going to take lawsuits to finally get it established that hemp flower was included in the CBD bill. When it passed here in South Carolina, even Tom Davis, said that when they were raiding places in Myrtle Beach a couple years back, and it still holds true. I don't care what the Attorney General said, because he's got it completely interpreted wrong, claiming it's unprocessed, where drying and curing is a process. And it's an important process. It's an important step in the process to do it correctly. So yeah, it's going to definitely take legislation to get there with South Carolina, unfortunately, unless something big happens at federal level.
Yeah. So this essentially what we're doing now with the Department of Ag, and essentially the translator of what the Attorney General wants to what actually happens. We're actually having a big sit down. We did like a upfront email questions, and then we're having a sit down towards the end of this month. So hopefully this will alleviate a lot of things, and it'll make everything look less criminal. Quotations for when they vote on everything this year, which from everything I could tell from my friends that work in there, say it should pass for 2023. But I'm not getting my hopes up like everyone else is. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking during the 2022 part of the session it'll pass. And then, they'll start implementing, I'm assuming, the following year, whatever. But let's keep our fingers crossed on that, and definitely keep me abreast of what you find out from when you talk to the Attorney General, when you and your group do that. All right, what time we got? Oh, it's 7:55, man. We had a good conversation tonight. Hopefully I didn't talk your ear off too much. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about what's going on with the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. I will keep you posted as I join in with Justin Streckel at our national meetings on what's going on, when it's moving forward. I mean, we are in September already, and we want to try and have this on, addressed, assigned to committee, voted on, moved out of committee, moved to the Senate floor, and voted on before the end of the year. And I believe session ends like early December, something like that, or before they go to break. So keep your fingers crossed on that. We'll keep you posted on what goes on with it. Otherwise, that is all I have for you tonight. I'm not going to talk to you all night long. And we will see you here. Where are we during the month? We won't be back until next Wednesday, 7 p.m. for our cannabis conversation. If you need to contact us, reach out through our website, normalsc.org or scnormal.org. Go to the contact page. Visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel in case you miss our meetings and we happen to talk about something intriguing and interesting. We get some tidbits in there. And also, last but not least, if you do go to our website, normalsc.org, scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll find a little spot down there where you can click to go and sign up for our newsletter if you're not already signed up for our newsletter. We generally send them out about once a month, and occasionally we'll send out some kind of meeting reminders for not as often as we should, actually. We need to send out more meeting reminders. But anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for joining me. I really look forward to seeing you back here again next week. So have a great night, and we'll talk to you again soon. Let's legalize marijuana. Bye-bye now.